If you're a teacher, you've probably spent way too much time creating slideshows and presentations for your class. Today, I'll be testing 5 AI slideshow generators to see which ones can actually save teachers time and to see which ones are not worth using. I'm going to put each slideshow generator through the same test and prompt to see how they actually compare. And then at the end of the video, I'll tell you which one I think is the best for teachers and which ones I would use for specific situations. The first one that I would like to start off with is one that is specifically designed for teachers. This is called Chalkie AI. For this test, I will give each slideshow generator the same topic, which will be needs versus wants, which is something that we cover in my class every year. So I created a prompt that I'll copy and paste into each generator just so that way we're keeping it fair between all 5. So with Chalkie AI, one difference that I need to point out immediately is they do not call their slideshows. They call them lessons. So you have the option of creating a single lesson, a lesson series, or activity worksheets. But for today, we're just going to focus on creating one presentation. So we're going to hit single lesson. I typed in needs versus wants for my topic. And then I'm going to type in my prompt for the specific directions. And my prompt, I do want it to be 8 slides, so I'm going to change that to 8 slides. I'm also going to change the grade to first grade. Chalkie does not let you leave these blank, so you do have to select your grade, reading level, slide amount, and language. But I am putting my prompt in there so that way it can be as accurate as possible. So I'm going to hit continue. And the next part, it asks you some other things that you might want included in your lesson, but some of these require the pro account. I'm just going to leave it at the default just to see what we get so that way we can equally compare. The next thing it asks me for is what I want the presentation to look like. So I'm going to keep it light and I'm going to hit generate. Okay, so it only took Chalkie 30 seconds to create this 8-slide presentation for me on needs and wants. And if we take a look, it has my title slide. It gave us a fun second slide to help students start to get engaged in the presentation. And then if we take a look, the third slide talks about what a need is. We have our examples, a want, comparing needs versus wants. Then it gives students a quick engaging activity where they have to spot the needs. And then just kind of a final conclusion slide, a key takeaway. This is something I definitely would show to my students. I'm really impressed with how quickly Chalkie created the presentation and how accurately it matched what I was looking for. I wanted it to be aimed for elementary school students and discussing what needs and wants are, and I think it did a great job of that. We will move on to the next generator and give it the exact same prompt to see what it can create compared to Chalkie. The second tool that we'll be looking at today is called Edcafe AI. This is a tool that I've talked about in other videos before and is one that I think is really beneficial for teachers. I also really like this tool because it is specifically designed just for teachers, just like Chalkie. If we go to Edcafe AI's website, the first thing we want to do is create new. At the bottom, under content and planning, you'll want to hit slide deck. In the topic box, we're going to write needs versus wants. And then in the additional instructions is where I'll put my prompt. On the same page, it asks us how many slides we want, language, and style. I will keep everything the same like I did with Chalkie. We'll do light, English, below 10 slides, and I'll hit generate. I'm going to start my timer to see how long it takes to create this presentation. It took Edcafe AI 20 seconds to create this slideshow for me on needs and wants. If we take a look, we have our title page, our what is a need page, what is a want, identifying the main difference between the two, examples for needs, examples for wants, how to decide, and then a quick review. Just with a quick eye test, I do think this one is not as appealing to a younger audience compared to Chalkie. I feel like some of these pictures are kind of bland. I think it's pretty plain on how everything is organized on the slides. If I'm choosing between Chalkie and Edcafe's layout, I definitely would choose Chalkie's over Edcafe, but I think the content is still good. So if you like the content of Edcafe, you definitely are able to tweak it afterwards before you hit save and publish. So that is another nice feature with Edcafe. I can go to each slide, I can move things around, I can edit what it says. That is a really neat feature of Edcafe. And then I can also add slides if I wanted to add more at the end. For our third tool today, we're going to move away from the education-only models, and we will look at one of the more popular AI slideshow generators that there is out there, and that is called Gamma. Gamma is probably the tool on this list that feels the most like a traditional AI slideshow generator, so it'll be interesting to see how this one performs compared to the other two educational models. I will go to gamma.app, and I'm going to hit Create New AI at the top, and I'm going to have it generate. I'm going to hit presentation. We'll do 8 slides and we'll leave everything how it is, default, classic, English. I will paste my prompt into that box and hit generate outline. Gamma is going to generate an outline for us before we actually create the presentation. So it's giving us a preview on what the presentation is going to look like. So if we want to make tweaks, we're able to make those tweaks before the slideshow is created. It will create 8 slides for us. We have a slide about a need, what is a want, the survivor test, needs and wants in the real world, why we can't have everything, a quick activity for students, and then a conclusion slide to help students feel like they accomplished their goal today. I will hit generate and we'll time how long it takes to create the presentation for us. Gamma took 30 seconds to create the slideshow, just like Chalkie AI did as well. I have to say I'm very impressed. Gamma took a little bit of a different route compared to the 2 educational models we already looked at. The first 2 just focused on what are needs, what are wants, and it was a very educational focused presentation. Gamma, which is not an educational model, made it seem more engaging for the students. It made the presentation not feel like students are just sitting and listening to the presentation. The first slide titled it as a detective mission. It makes students feel like they're about to embark on this mission once this slideshow gets started, so it helps them feel a little bit more engaged and involved in their learning. I really like the images that are included with it as well. So we have the title slide, which I just touched on. What is a need? What is a want? I do also really like how it is laid out with the pictures, the different boxes. Very easy for students to follow along. A quick survivor test helps students identify if something is a need or a want. Then we have needs and wants in the real world, and why we can't have everything. This is a slide that I did not ask it to include, but I really like that it did include this. This is an important thing that we should include in this lesson about needs and wants. It could also be used as a segue into a follow-up lesson about resources, limited resources, and stuff like that. It did include a sorting activity for students to work on with a friend, so this is a great way to do a turn and talk and have students work together and think quickly about which one is a need and a want. Then the last slide is our conclusion, mission accomplished. It also has a quick review about needs and wants. I do have to say, for this not being education focused, I think it made it the most educational friendly for students. I definitely give it a star there. Moving on to number 4, we cannot talk about AI slideshow generators without talking about Canva. I've talked about Canva in many of my other videos. It is one of my favorite tools to use for a teacher, and I highly recommend all teachers using it. So if you've used Canva before, you know how powerful it is, but let's see how good it is compared to the rest. I will open up Canva and find on the left-hand side where it says Canva AI, and I'm gonna enter my prompt into the prompt box, and I'm gonna hit the arrow for it to generate. Similarly to Gamma, Canva has created an outline for me that I'm able to edit and review prior to the slideshow being generated. I do really like that feature. It didn't take long for the outline to be created, and I can go through and see what I like and what I don't like, and if I need to make any changes. But I will leave it how it is just for the purpose of this test, and I'm gonna start my timer and hit generate design. Canva took about 1 minute and 20 seconds, which has been the longest out of our generators so far. If we take a look, it created a very student-friendly presentation. I think out of our 4 so far, Canva has created the most grade level accurate presentation. Even though my prompt only said elementary, I still think this one fits the most elementary themed presentation out of the 4 we've looked at. So we have our cover page, then we have what are needs, what are wants, how can we tell the difference, real life examples, a quick review so students are able to discuss with a teacher. You could have students do a turn and talk, key things to remember page, and our conclusion, great job page. Content-wise, I think Canva is very similar to the other 4 we've already looked at. One really nice thing with Canva is everything is editable and you can do it at any time. So I was able to edit the content in the outline beforehand, but now that I'm in the presentation, I'm able to also edit it right here. I can add my own pictures, I can add new content, I can move things around. That is something that is really neat with Canva. And if you are a Canva user, you totally understand the power it has. One nitpick I have with these Canva presentations is the images. I think Canva has the hardest time with images. You could see on some of these slides, the images are cut off, they're not displayed properly, they framed them wrong. So that's one downside to Canva, is it can create good content, but it sometimes has trouble with the framing and the layouts of the media that you will be including in your presentations. The last tool that we're going to be testing today is called Slidesgo. When you open Slidesgo website, the first thing that you'll see is the prompt box where you can enter your prompt and begin creating your presentation. I will type in my prompt into the box. I will hit get started, and it asked me to choose a theme. I'm going to hit the basic default theme just like I did with the rest. I'll hit continue, and it's starting to create my slide. I'll start my timer to see how long it takes. After about 1 minute and 10 seconds, our presentation from Slidesgo is completed. Slidesgo gave us a 9-slide presentation with the title page, needs versus wants, needs keep us safe slide, wants add fun, needs keep us safe, 3-step guide on how to identify a need, a quick sorting activity, helpful tips to determine needs, a review and play. If we take a look, only 1 slide had images. To be honest, I'm not very impressed with this presentation, and I don't think that it really fits the style for elementary school students. I would never use this presentation when teaching my students. It also has a lot of text per slide rather than images and prompts. I would say that Slidesgo had the hardest time making a elementary school focused presentation. I think it tried to be a little too creative with the titles of slides and the focus of each slide rather than giving us an accurate title for each slide page. However, it does look like that you do have editing ability. So if you really like the Slidesgo website, you are able to take the time to edit the slides to make it fit your teaching style. After testing all 5 of these generators, I wanted to do a quick breakdown of each one and kind of rank them based on my favorites and my preferences. Overall, I think the worst generator that I would not recommend for teachers would be Slidesgo. I don't think it made the presentation very educational for students. It was hard to follow and not very appealing or engaging for the students. I think my favorite actual presentation was Gamma. Even though Gamma is not one of the educational models we tried, I think it created the best overall presentation that was engaging, appealing, great layout. I really enjoyed how that presentation came out. If you're trying to create a presentation as quickly as possible that matches the topic you give it, I think Edcafe or Chalkie are the way to go. Those both completed my presentations in about 30 seconds, and they both followed my prompt perfectly and created a slideshow that I was exactly looking for. I think Chalkie's was a little bit better, but I think both are great options. I want to talk about Canva. Canva has some pros and cons with the slideshow generation. The biggest pro is that it is free for teachers. You can create as many slideshows as you want, and you have total creative control over the slideshow once it's created. However, a couple cons was it took the longest out of all of our slideshow generators, and it was a little finicky with the images and media that was added to each slideshow. But if that's something that you don't mind moving around and fixing, and if you want to save money, Canva is definitely the one to pick. If we talk about the other ones and their pricing models, even though Gamma was my favorite, Gamma is also the most expensive by far. It costs a ton of AI credits to create your presentations, and every time you upgrade, that price goes up a lot. Chalkie and Edcafe are the other 2 that I'd recommend. Both have a basic plan between $5 and $10, and their premiums between $10 and $15. I feel comfortable recommending both of those. I think both models are definitely worth the price to pay, especially if you will be creating a lot of presentations. Those are my 5 favorite AI slideshow generators for teachers. I'm curious, which ones do you use or which one's your favorite? Please leave a comment below. I'd love to see what other teachers are using or what other teachers like. And if you are a teacher who's looking to learn more about ed tech and help save time in the classroom each week, please hit that like and subscribe. I create new videos every week on different tools and resources for teachers. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.